How are you?
It's good to see you again, man.
We're good to see you as well. We're lucky that in Australia at the moment that the lights and the cameras don't run on diesel or crude oil. They run on electricity. I think that we've spent the last 20 years trying to build green energy, so at least it's good for something.
Yeah, it's been brutal. It's brutal everywhere, but based on what you and I have talked about, the diesel and the fuel is more brutal for you than it is even for us here.
I think we've ran into, our politicians, which I don't know if you should trust what they say or take it with a grain of salt. I think the grain of salt is probably the more prudent way to look at what they say. However, they've said that we actually haven't ran into a supply issue at all. We've ran into the demand issue. The demand has gone up 30-40% at the moment because Australians have gone out and they call it panic buying, but I think that it's probably more strategic purchasing to hold on to fuel before it rises and everything. We import all of our fuel, and so then we're left with, we've depleted our reserves quite quickly, which has meant the price has doubled.
That's brutal. I know. And it kind of feeds into the question that we have carrying over from the end of last episode is how much should I have for reserves, for operating reserves? What's a safe level? And I think we didn't answer the question. I think we quickly did, but there's some differences of opinion, but some people say at least 90 days of operating capital. And typically that means, and I think people define that differently, but it's basically lease payments, debt service that you have to take care of. It's payroll, it's equipment maintenance, it's materials, and some other things too. And you may look at it differently. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
I do. There's a lot of costs of a company that are out there because you also have property payments, you have tax payments as well. And so, when you do own those properties, a lot of people don't see the fact that you have to repay them to the bank. And the tax payments, are they included or excluded in what you think that the reserves are? Now, at certain times, I've not been the greatest friend of the tax man and so that's maybe a little bit more fluid in my brain about if the tax component is included. But yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. And the other part is do you take into account anything other than the cash that you have?
That's a good question. So what do you have in mind?
Okay, a line of credit that you have against a property.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to redraw $1 million.
Yep.
Does that include? Is that
so,
included?
I think in my business in the beginning, we talked a lot last episode about my business back in the 90s, and I was in the line of credit all the time. And I was for the next 20 years all the time, not fully extended all the time, but I was in the line of credit sometimes in the year all the time. To me, as a business owner, we finally were able to get out of the line of credit, and we haven't been in the line of credit for 6-7 years now, which is really I can't tell you how much freedom that gives you to start thinking about business differently. You can start thinking about 5 and 10 and 20 years ahead when you don't have to get in the line all the time, versus when you're in the line, you're always trying to fill that line back in. But I think ideally it would not include the line, but certainly it must. I mean, you have to include the line in the calculation, right?
In the equation.
Yeah.
And that I think is the difficult part, because I do have a lot of questions about it. So is this cash in the bank? Is this jobs that you have already paid for, that it is sitting in arrears or due from a client at all? Because there's and are you allowed to carry 50% of that bill, 25% of that bill? Is there a component of that you have already paid all of the overheads, you've already paid all of the materials, you've paid the guys on the job site to do it? Because If we take into real easy numbers, just real easy numbers so that we can put a bit of a framework around it, we got a company turning over $1 million a month. 3 months worth of cash in the bank is $3 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what about if they have $1.5 million in the bank, but they're owed 5, and of that 5, they've paid all of the bills, all of the tax, all of the wages, all of that, and they're going to get it? Should that company be shaking in their boots about the fact that they've only got 6 weeks worth of 6 weeks worth of reserves, when in actual fact they probably, like, we could paint a pretty picture here, of course. They've worked for the company for 10 years. They always get paid. The next payment is coming through on the 15th, and today's the 12th, and they just paid out more of their bills, and they dropped from 2 million to 1.5 million. Should they be worried? Does it count, the 5 million? What about if it's even better, spread over 5 companies that owe them 1 million each? Are we able to say, half of it will come? What's your thoughts?
I think the way the question was framed to me was what level of cash is appropriate so that I'm not dependent on somebody to make sure I can get through the next 90 days. And an example of that is, in some types of government work, here in the States right now, we have a government shutdown on top of the other things that we have going on. And that has, in the past, has slowed up payments from departments of transportation that were always like clockwork. You get it every month, boom, boom. And then suddenly the government shuts down and that ends. And so you can't be dependent on that. So the way I believe the question was framed is, what do I need so that I'm not dependent? And if something breaks down, or there's some hiccup in the way the money comes through, I can still survive. The general thought on some of the research I did was 60 to 90 days. To me, that's a little lean. I think 90 to 180 days is better.
I don't think I've ever had 180 days, but I know that I have more cash now than I used to have.
Yeah.
There was times I didn't have 8 days.
I've been there. Yeah.
And there are times I've actually told the story a fair bit. One of my good friends that I work with, his name's Anthony, and I will shout him out. And I would ring him on a Monday and say I don't have money for a Wednesday, and he will put money in my account to pay people. And I've told that story a lot, and I'm not too ashamed of it either, because I think that that's part of the stigma that comes out. Now, Not having the money for Wednesday's payment on Monday, that's not good business.
No.
That's not good business. At some point, having 360 days worth of operating cash in the bank also is probably not good business at some point, like, depending on what perspective you look at it.
Sure. Well, it's all about
somewhere in between.
So there comes a point in time where hopefully we get, as business owners and business leaders, to the point where one of our primary jobs is to tell capital where to go to work for us. And I mentioned at the end of last episode, a company that did $25 million in revenue every year, and they had over 25 million, close to $30 million in cash on their balance sheet. And I mean, that's a strong company, right? And I asked the guy, why do you have this? You need to get this cash the hell out of here, because that's not responsible. You need to take it and put it somewhere else to work for you. And his response to me was, I've already taken all I can. I've got stuff hidden everywhere. I can't take any more out. Now, that's a good position to be in. I've never been in that position. But the deeper point is, if we can get to the point where we have cash sitting idle, that's a better problem to have than cash not having cash at all or being right at payroll every week. But it's a different set of problems because then in order to me to be a responsible business person, you've got to find a place to make that cash go to work. And one of the problems I see that I did and I see it everywhere now with these companies that I've been talking to over the last several months is instead of just parking it on the side in a good, safe but good investment, let's say 6 or 8%, instead of doing that, then they go on another routine and they try to find something else. And I know you mentioned real estate is good, but
This
the
this this
question
black
is,
duck, yeah.
are you going to get yourself to the point where, and this is what happened to me. We put a bunch of money into a ready mix operation for 10 years. We lost money every year at it. And it took so much management time, just totally diluted our management time that it, what it cost us in numbers on the P&L was nowhere near what it cost us in culture, in morale, and in dollars on the overall company P&L. So I think it's great if you can get to a point where you can slide a little bit out every week, every month. I mean, it's kind of like saving for yourself. If you can just do $10 a month as an employee, as an operator out there, $20 a month saving, if you begin to build that muscle and then always do it, and then you miss it, you don't even miss it, kind of like taxes, right? Your taxes get taken out of your check and off you go. You don't even know. I mean, there's nothing you can do about it, right? So just act like you're paying the tax man instead of the tax man you're paying yourself. And the question is, do you want pain in 30 years as an individual or do you want pain now?
Oof, you've touched on a
And the
lot of
same thing
points.
as a business.
Mate. You've
I'm
touched on
enjoying
a
my
lot of.
pint, by the way. You get to
I'm.
choose where you want your pain.
It looks a little bit hazy for me. I'm
It
more of a
is.
straight draft man. Louis would be a hazy man. You touched on a lot of points that really hit home for me, and I find that in these conversations, maybe because we're just 20 or 30 years apart in what we're doing, and that's about it. Okay, I originally thought that real estate was it, so I've gone to real estate. Interest rates are a killer when you have a bit of when you have a bit of real estate. Don't you know when they go up when you've got some? I also bought those asphalt trucks. Great investment. Asphalt's killing it, especially as the DOT it has just put a slight pause on some maintenance programs and some other things. That's really good.
Wonderful.
I purchased a quarry that had an expired license that everyone told me would be the easiest thing. Just a quick hop, step, and jump to get that permit reactivated. Just real simple. Well, the native title that went out there a month ago found some rocks that were the bad sort of rocks to find. So, as a person who goes around and then immediately as they make money jumps into different adventures, I understand the problem that sort of mentality can have, and I think I'm finally coming to the end of it now as I now have spread myself super thin. I do think that that's part of the issue about being, and I hate the word a lot, which is the entrepreneur. I do think that that's part of the problem with being an entrepreneur, that you need
It
to
is.
realize in yourself what your issues are. My issue is that I think that I have the capacity to do more than I probably do and take on more than I probably need to. And so then it all leads back to this cash equation, how much you've got, how much is deployed on the field. And so I'm probably a lower number, probably because of the fact that I'm still running running, sprinting,
Yeah.
actually, at all times. I don't think that 30 days is enough. I think that 60 days plus is better than 60 days minus.
Yeah.
But I think that 90 or 180 days probably comes from being in business like you were 35 years rather than being in business like I was 19 years, or I am at 19 years. Um, it does lead into another question, though, that if you do have 90 days and then it increases to 120 days, are you able to take it? What's good to take it for? Or if worse, you have 60 days like this. I'll explain the situation I'm in right now and we can go through it. My workload has probably gone down 25 to 50% since the fuel doubled in Victoria.
Mm.
And so that would be dipping into, while one metric of it is saying, okay, well, now labor time is decreased and a few of these things and materials have gone down. We probably have, at the current speed, enough cash to run for double the amount of time. The amount of money coming in, however, and the overhead still being the same, especially because this king loves buying real estate. What do you do and what is okay to spend that money reserve on, Herb?
I think that's something that I've never had to worry about that much in my career, honestly, until the last several years. And part of the reason that we've had that problem in the last several years is employee-owned companies in the States do not pay taxes. So what formerly was going out in taxes when we made, let's say, $500,000, we paid $250,000 in taxes. Well, now
Mhm.
that does not happen. That stays inside the company. And so the cash accumulates twice as fast as it used to, right? And um, so that's part of the reason. But we were always investing in equipment, some land, some stupid business deals like Ready Mix, and then we
Ready
bought
mix
an
sounds great.
electrician. We
Ready
bought an
mix.
electric We bought an electrician one time because he didn't have any cash, and the bank basically sold us his assets, and then we just took him over. And there's another dilution of my my mind, our management resources. But I think you can go down to the local bank, and they probably have a trust department that you can go down and say, okay, I'm gonna ask you to take care of my surplus funds. Now, you and I, in most of our careers, didn't have surplus funds enough to go to the bank and say, do this. But I think it's a worthwhile thing for people to do, to go down and just say, listen, I don't have any surplus funds right now, but what I'd like to do is just set up a savings account. And depending on the size of your business, you know, Jimmy, could you put $5,000 a month in the bank from your business in the business's name and not even notice it really?
I'd hope so.
Yeah, I mean, I think almost most businesses could put 1,000 to 5,000, and then there by the end of the year you've got $60,000 in the bank. That is another some period of time of operating capital for you to use in the case that the government stops paying or you have an owner that doesn't pay on time like they're supposed to. But just trying to begin to build that muscle of we're going to build for strength now. Now we've been kind of in survival mode all this time, but now we're going to go into strategic mode and build for strength. And whatever that is, it might be $500 a month for some companies, just to put that in the bank. And then when you get some amount of money, then go to the bank's trust department and say, I want you to invest this, and they'll help you write an investment thesis around what to do with that money. Like, we want it to be really aggressive and we don't care if we lose it. Right. So then they'll just invest in really speculative stuff. But if you say, listen, I don't want this money to go away, they'll invest it in bonds or something like that. That's better than the interest rate you get in a savings account. Because what you get in a savings account right now, at least in the States, is 0.25%. 0.5%, maybe something like that. And as you
Nothing.
pointed out last episode, um, inflation has been probably on average 5% over the last 5 years. So you got to do better than 5% just to keep up with your money, just to keep up with inflation. But that's what I would say is just begin to set it aside in a separate account for your company. And then when you get a little bit of meat there, enough so that you can talk to the trust department, then go over and establish that relationship. And they can probably beat inflation. But
It's
but
very,
don't
it's,
don't ever let it get to the point, Jimmy, where you've got a year and a half's revenues in your checking account.
yeah. Oh, don't worry, I won't. Don't worry. I'm not the sort of guy.
And
There sounds you've actually sold me on Ready Mix. It sounds
oh
like
yeah, you
I need
should.
to, yeah. It only takes a decade to realize if you're making money or not.
Yeah, that's the quickest way to be a millionaire is spend 10 million on Ready Mix.
I just just buy a quarry and then find rocks that we used to make other rocks sharp, and like it'll derail the whole process. Like
Now,
they don't even look like special rocks. But I'm not a I'm not a guy who understands special rocks though, so I'm probably not the guy to talk about it. I'm just the one who wants to open a quarry. Um,
these quarries, real estate, really, I mean, it can be a great investment, as you know, because I'm sure not every real estate deal you've ever made has been bad. It can be a great investment.
yeah.
The due diligence on the front end is so key.
I went to probably 3 or 4 different unconnected people and took them all of the paperwork and said, "This is what I'm interested in. What are your thoughts?" And they all came back with the same answer, which is, and I really probably didn't dive deep enough into the psyche and the thought process behind it, because the due diligence that they were getting paid for was a minute amount of work. The amount of work that goes into it on if you actually start it. So all of them said the same thing and completely unrelated. "Oh, no problem. We'll get this sorted for you. Easy. This is Ready Mix. Easy. Just put the concrete in, mix it together, put it in a truck and deliver it to site. How hard can it be?"
It's just like a cake mix, really. It's just a recipe.
Yeah, it's
Put
just,
in an egg,
just
put in the cake mix, a little bit of milk, and then whip up a cake, right?
yeah, and if you buy trucks that eject from the front, we'll keep them busy all the time.
Oh yeah, I heard
The
that one too.
Yeah,
But
I know you did. That's
you're facing right now this cash thing we're talking about. How much cash should you have around? You're facing right now a pretty sizable challenge because of the diesel fuel, and this is the kind of thing that happens in business. Is suddenly it's rare that that something hits you that just feeds your bottom line like crazy, right? Like some government intervention rarely steps in and feeds your bottom line, doubles it. But what does happen is things like this fuel thing has taken place, and you could probably blame us Americans for that. Um,
I do. I do blame you. But I have a very interesting question for you here. The the subcontractor pool that I pull from um, is hemorrhaging money.
mm,
So their one of their major costs from that sub pool for the brokerage is the fact that their diesel bill has more than doubled for the week. That has emptied their bank accounts. So now, as the brokerage, my pressure is the jobs aren't making as much money, but the trucks don't have the money to go to work. And so they're all calling my office and saying, if I can get an early payment, I'll be able to go to work. Now, an isolated event of a $10,000 invoice that comes through, or it comes, to get a guy to go to work is not an issue. What about if I pay 400 and something of them a month And now I'm stuck in this middle of, like, the first week when it happened, like, I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's worked for us a really long time. No problem. Release some of the payment early. It's only a week early, But then after probably 3 or 4 days of that, I had to stop that because it was starting to actually make a noticeable impact on multiple ways. It said, we now are earning less money with less trucks at work and going to deploy our capital that we're holding in reserves. Let's say it's 60 days and we start eroding that. 60 turns into 55, turns into 50, turns into 45. And you have to stop that because that's actually a nest egg that needs to be protected.
Mm.
But if you had have asked me 12 months, even 3 months ago, that nest egg that you have of the operating cost, if anything turns to shit, I'd say, oh yeah, you'd look after the subcontractors, you'd look after this, you'd pay the people and everything else. And instead, what actually ends up happening is you go, okay, well, we need to make sure that we're looking at the jobs, decrease the amount of overtime, increase the efficiencies on site. We need to, the subcontractors must wait for their payment in line with their payment terms, not saying don't pay them. But if you had have said, I'm going to send less trucks to work 3 months ago, I would have said, oh no, I'll just pay them all and they'll come.
Yeah.
As soon as it gets a bit shaky, the whole perspective change.
Now think about this. Let's say there are 3 companies just like yours: Starbuck, Herbuck, and company number 3. And company number 3 has 2 years of operating cash on hand. And I have 10 days of operating cash on hand. You have 60 to 90 days. The music is going to stop and somebody's going to be without a chair. Right? And that's the case to be made for building that war chest. And I think we ended last episode is what you need to build the war chest is what builds the war chest. That's the people. That's the systems that you have. That's the war chest you need to build the war chest. And if you don't manage the first war chest right, you don't ever get to the second war chest. So if you don't manage the operations right, you never get to the war chest of the cash.
So let me put it another way also. If I had $25 million sitting in a bank account right now, I'd pay all of the trucks in 7 days. And I would ruin the market for my competitors. I'd have every truck working for me. I'd have 300 or 400 trucks at work for me a day. And I only need them to work for me at this time for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, my competitors won't have a business. And that's the option. And that's how clear it is. If you come to my office, the phones aren't ringing for jobs. The phones on one side of my office, the operational side, aren't ringing. Come listen to the phone in the finance side, though, which usually doesn't ring that much. Yeah. If I said to them, you're signing up, the only way I'll get you these payments, I'll pay you in 7 days every day for a month while this fuel is hurting. But you have to work for me for the month. It'd change the game. It'd change the whole game. And so I don't have that option. I'm sitting here and I'm protecting that. But if there was serious depth there in the bank account, you'd have that option. And I think that that's what cash ends up doing to a business. It gives you options. So whether it's real estate, ready mix, quarries, whatever it is, it gives you the option to do that. And so now the cash would give me the option to win. Like I'd win trucking in my state, that I'd just be the winner.
And that's really what you just described is the story of altitude. It's when you lose power in the plane, if you're flying at the treetop levels, you're in the trees. But if you're flying at 32,000 feet, you've got about 40 minutes to make a decision.
Yeah. And
And
just
that's what that cash gives you. It gives you that altitude, and it gives you that margin of safety, so that when things do change, you're not you're not in a crisis immediately. You can say, okay, let's think this thing through. Let's not get task saturated. Let's spread these tasks out that we don't have to, like, what's the most important one now? Not when we're flying at the treetop level and all those tasks are within 42 seconds when we lose power.
yeah,
And
it's
you just don't have many options. And so that's exactly the whole concept around this altitude thing that I've been thinking about. Um, and it's really, part of it is power, but I don't like to look at it as power. It's more strength in the options that you have. Versus, like you mentioned, like, if I had 25 million in the bank, the other two guys would be out of business in 3 weeks. That isn't really what you want, right? I mean,
no,
you
no,
want
definitely
to
not.
have a good, strong business, but we don't want to drive people out of business. I don't think, or at least I never did. I
No,
mean,
no,
there's some
that's
people.
not. That's not the outcome we're chasing. But what the
Uh,
outcome we're chasing is, currently I have trucks that can't go to work.
mm,
Imagine they could all go to work. The whole industry is currently shaking about not being able to go to work. Imagine they could go to work for Starbuck. Isn't that a great thing?
mm. And now
I
you think about those, whether some of them probably independent truckers.
mm, yep,
You,
most
you
of them.
think about those guys and what they might have for a margin of safety in their finances, and it's probably not very big. Like, those guys are probably not sitting on 30 days of operating cash.
Well, what's really interesting is that's what it's coming up with now. That's why my finance phone is ringing so much,
Mhm.
and why the operations phone isn't able to get these, because the independent ones make up a good portion. I don't know exactly what percentage it is, but a good portion. Those are the ones that aren't at work at the moment, because the cash has been. I've never seen anything like it. I thought COVID was interesting. We had lockdowns and we had stuff, but we always continued to have work, um,
Mhm.
and pretty good work. The work that's out there at the moment, I have friends that are pausing multi-million-dollar developments that are going on because the concrete price has gone up, the timber price has gone up. We can't buy pipe. The PVC pipe, Herb, has gone up 40%
Yeah. And
if you can get the delivery.
it's the same with anything that's petroleum related, right? It's HDPE pipe, it's HDP liners on landfill cells. It's everything and then even that drives up the prices of other things. Like, you might have been able to buy ductile iron uh, 2 weeks ago for the price of what HDPE is today, but now all of a sudden the ductile iron prices are up too, and it just has a way to ripple through the market, these increases that can be really difficult. And I know in the States, I know of one contractor I talked to about a year ago, and he said, I've got some projects to build some subdivisions for homes, and he said one of them I'm already 25% done. And so two jobs with the same national home builder, and one of them is already 25% done, and they came to him and they wanted a 10% cut in his price. The other one, he had just been awarded, and they came to him and they wanted 10% cut in his price. And he asked me my advice, and I said, this is a really dangerous precedent for you to go in after the fact and alleviate your pricing, because what it tells them is you had more money than you really needed on the jobs. And I don't think he did. But as contractors, entrepreneurs, um, we just do what we got to do to get the next check in, and it's hard to hold the line sometimes.
Sometimes it feels impossible. to hold the line.
Mm.
I had a really great customer of mine that I work with I've worked for a really, really long time. And the rate was $150, we'll call it. $150. We priced it for 153. My competitor came in at 150. He rang me up and said, I want you to do 150. I said, no, I want 153. And he said, no, they're 150. I said, they're hungry for your work. I've done all of your work for 5 years. I said, you've done a check and I am, what's that, 1.5% away? And he's like, it actually ended up starting to be a thing. We had meetings about it and we had this. And I said to him, I'm not going to do it at 150. I'm not.
Yep.
I'll die on this hill, because how can I do all of this work for you for so long? We price the jobs, we tender the jobs with you, we support you through that whole process even when you don't win. We have supplied trucks for you forever, and you're telling me that I'm not worth 1% more money? Like, now we ended up coming to it got so big that we had someone else that heard about our argument come in and said, sit down. And he goes, Jimmy, you're going to do it for 150, and you're going to pay 150, because I also work with both of you guys and I need you, because I dug in that hard.
Yeah.
It's about knowing your worth while at the same time understanding your numbers and your margins and everything else. And looking back on that, I said to him, I'd rather not work for you if I always have to be the cheapest price. I want to do the best job, not be the cheapest. Being the cheapest is a hard game to play.
It is. But unfortunately, contracting is built around that. At least in the States, it is. All the public work goes out to public bid. And if you're not low bidder, and I go around down here in Florida, there's some road jobs going on in this place I live in, and it's taking them a year and a half to do what we could do in a half a season in Maine. And I just, I'm driving through this job every single day and there's nobody there. And you can't make money if you don't do the job, right? I don't know. Now I'm on a whole different soapbox now, but your point, I bid a job one time and the owner of the job told me, we're going to let contractor X bid the job, but there's no way we're going to hire him to do the job. So contractor X knew that was the case. So what does contractor X do? He bids the job at about 70% of what rate should be.
Why didn't he do 130%? That would have been better. Protected the rates across the entire state.
Because he wanted to take money out of our pockets. And I can remember I went in and I sat down and they had a guy that was kind of buying the job out for him. And he said, Herb, here's what we're going to do. You're at $200,000. Contractor X is at $135,000. So we're going to see who comes closest to contractor X. And I said, I'm out. And as I was walking out, contractor Y was walking in, and his name was Joey. And I said, Joey, do not play this game. Do not play this game with these guys. Joey played the game.
How'd Joey go?
Not very well.
Mm.
In fact, both contractor and Y are out of business now.
It's like Herb, I'm telling you, I really dug in my feet over that dollar. Even thinking about it now, I rung him up and I said, you will pay me this dollar. I said, after all I've done, I said, what? I'm a percent. I'm a percent away and you won't even give it. I'm not what my company isn't worth a pinch of shit. Not even
Pixie
a pinch.
dust, yeah.
Not nothing. And you sit here and all of the times you've rung me and you've forgotten to book, and all of the times that you've said, I want to finish this job and please send me 25 trucks instead of 15. And then all of a sudden the 25 trucks finish at lunchtime and they're all pissed off, or I don't get the full utilization from it. All of that is boiled down to, you got to be one. I'm on a soapbox. It's gonna send my whole day if I get too far into it again.
So here's the thing, but you weren't upset about the $1 or the $1.50.
No.
You were upset about the principle of the $1, $1.50. Because here's the thing, if you had gone down to 150, the other guy would have dropped his price to 147. And there you go.
Yeah.
You're just chasing down a rabbit hole, and it's no good. It's contractors are the most idiotic fucking people on the planet. I swear to God, and I've been that person. I've been that person where I chased the fucking rabbit hole. And
Herb, I know we're not meant to talk over each other, but I was the guy that for 10 years would have said, 150, I'm so sorry, 145. I'll be 145. I'll pay you to do the job. Do you know what? Don't even pay me. I'll send the trucks for free.
You can have the trucks. I'll even fuel them for you. I'll title the trucks over to you, and I'll buy the fuel.
That's funny. Yeah.
But so that's a great question, though. When did you turn the page on that? When did you start saying, I'm not just selling this product, I'm selling Starbuck, I'm selling value, I'm giving you more than you're asking for to begin with? Or did you not give more than they asked for to begin with? Did you
I sold my soul. And like I went and drove trucks myself when we were short trucks, and I'd go get one, cancel my meetings in the afternoon and go drive it to move one load of 100. I don't always do it. I still, underneath all of this bravado on the screen, sometimes sit down and say, guys, we can't lose this job. Do it 145. Like, come on, guys. Like, we got to do it. And they're like, Jimmy, we're not making any money. There's no money. I'm like, yeah, but this is the one. Like, and they're like, it's always the one. I like to say that I do it. I definitely am better at knowing our worth and our dollar rate and our value to people. And I suppose it turned around when, how many times have you bid those jobs for those people and they end up not giving it to you and giving it to the other guy at 150?
Or maybe giving you that one, but giving the next one the better job to the next guy. But we've got this mentality, like when you were saying we got to get this number to 145. Like I can almost hear Jimmy Starbuck going into the crew saying, we got to get to 145. We've already bought tires for all the trucks. We don't have to buy tires for this job. So this job won't see that cost, right?
Yeah.
We can talk ourselves into the craziest shit. It's like, hey, we put a D6 undercarriage on last spring. We don't need to pay for that until the next job. So let's just let it ride this job. We can talk ourselves in, contractors can talk themselves into. It's not optimism either. It's lunacy is what it is.
Stupidity. I've got, with my trucks, I send my trucks so that the subs, the independent truckers and stuff, they get the better jobs. I send my trucks to the bad jobs. And then I'll be like, that's okay. We'll pick up a load on the way home. See? We'll pick up a load on the way home to fill out our day.
That's a free load.
Oh, man.
We can reason, man. We can, like when we're playing blackjack, we can reason why we should double down on a 16 against a dealer's 20.
Yeah,
that's what we do. We do it all the friggin' time.
How do you stop that though? When did you turn? Because I know that there was a time that you wanted the bids more than you wanted air in your lungs. You wanted to win jobs. It's not a want anymore. It's a need. When did you change to walk out and see Joey in the hallway?
I think part of it was knowing who I was dealing with on that particular job. But probably for me, the time that really, really drove it home for me is there was a big Formula One road course being built in New Hampshire. And I mean, it was a big job. It was a $14-15 million job. And I just wanted to nail the job down. This is in 2013. We needed work so bad. And I just wanted to nail the job down. So I went to the owner and I proposed, we will do the job cost plus X% markup. And we're going to give you a guaranteed maximum price. And so here's the guaranteed maximum price. Let's say it's $15 million. And if we come in at $14 million cost with our markup on top, we'll split that last $1 million. You get $500,000, I get $500,000. So for that reason, I'm encouraged, I'm motivated to reduce costs all the time because I get 50 cents of every dollar we save. We had cost plus X% on this. I think it was 14%. Might as well say it. 14 cost plus 14%. This is when times are really lean. I mean, like we don't do 14% ever. And I met with a guy and he said, can you do better than 14%? And I went through every bid that we had gotten, every public bid we had gotten for the last 3 years. And I printed out the summary sheet on each bid, what the markup was. And I said, here's what we do. And I think it was 15.2 or something like that. That's what we've got to have. So he says, all right, let's go. And we mobilized. Herb didn't have a contract. One of those pesky little things. Herb didn't have a contract. And I said, we need to get the contract negotiated. So we went and met at his attorney's office, and he said, his attorney, your markup's too high. And I said, no, it's not. And he said, yeah. He said, I could get a line around the block of contractors willing to do this at cost plus 3%. Cost plus 3%, Jimmy. And I said, okay. So what you're saying is you reject my proposal. And he said, well, no, no. So here's the proposal. Here it is. Will you sign that proposal? Well, no. Okay, you reject this proposal. Yes. Okay, let's meet on the job tomorrow. We're going to move all our equipment off and, we'll button things up from an erosion control standpoint and you'll owe me for that. And that was me walking away from a $14-15 million job in 2013 when I was on my hands and knees for work.
I have a question because so I was in like cap price 14% when your real cost is 15.2%, right? And all of these things I was in. And then that guy gave you that contract and told you he'd get a line of people. The hair on my neck bristled a little bit. And I went, you know what? I'm out. Yeah. I'm out. And I'm not out because of the 14%. I'm not out because of the ceiling price. I'm not out of the shared gain part without the shared pain, which is if we're under that, I'll give you the money off. No, I'm out because that attorney, he got me wrong. And and isn't it funny, the mentality about it? Because up until that moment, you would have they would have said, listen, Herb, I know you like your 10 fingers. However, if you give us one finger, you can have the job. You go, oh, I don't even use my pinky that much. Like I could give a pinky. And then it's like, no, we're going to take your finger. And you go, I'd rather die than give you my pinky. Like, right. I'm drawing a line.
Right.
Did you do the job?
We ended up doing the job. So I met the next day at the site with this guy and his board of directors chair. And this guy was a private equity investor. And the older guy, he was probably 75 at the time. This is 15 years ago almost. And he asked me, he said, "So you'd rather just walk away than," and I said, "Oh, absolutely. Like, we're already at the edge of extinction with this price we've already given you, right? We're already at the edge of where it's even comfortable." And he said, "So what was the number?" And I said, 14%. He said, "Holy shit." So we're driving and we're looking at all these big rock faces. And he said, do you own that as part of this price?" I said, "Yeah, that's all part of my price." And he said, "You should be getting a 40% markup. We're doing this deal with you." And it was an attorney, right? That's what it was the attorney. I think the attorneys ought to stay in the legal world and let the business people stay in the business world. And I say that with all due respect because
Of
I
course.
know
Yep.
some wonderful attorneys, but the attorneys, um, what to me, what they are for is to outline where our risk is and then let us be business people about how much risk we want to take on.
Mm.
That's what I think the attorney, the accountant, right? That professional, I think it's, listen, I want you to tell me what my risk is, and then I'll figure out my tolerance.
I have a very similar deal that was around 12.5 million that was almost signed up. And I ended up getting my backup about something, and I ended up it cost $1 million more. Like, I won't go into too many details about it, but threw the whole lot in the bin. I said, "No, we're done. We're out. We're finished. We're moving on." And so, how you approach people and how you deal with people, and it was a very similar sort of scenario to an attorney. And it was almost all signed, sealed, delivered, 12.5 million. We're good to rock and roll, ready to roll. And then we had a situation that just blew up out of hand. And I said, I'm not getting involved with this, so I'm out. Ended up 13.5 million. And
So
that's
what was it that made you say I'm out?
the way I was spoken to.
Hmm.
And the way that I was spoken to, like and it sort of sounds a little bit, it was already, it sounds very similar to your deal in terms of 14%. It's already skinny. I've already got value here. I already know. And like, I'm on the bones of my ass on this deal already. If you want more, then take him. Now, that guy who told you the next day you should get 40%, how many contractors do you think he could have lined up for a 3% markup?
I know.
None.
It was
And you
asinine. The whole thing was asinine.
and you got some, like, and there are, there are not good businessmen, there's not good civil contractors, there's not good haulage people, and there's not good attorneys. And that's okay, because you got a weasel there who's trying to give you a final squeeze. And I've already, I'm the sort of man, if I walk in and I say, "Listen, I'm doing this job for nothing," I'm doing it for nothing. Like, I am like,
Right.
you don't actually have to worry. Don't come to look at my books, because all they're going to tell you is what I've already told you. 14% is 0%. 3%, but 3%, you may as well have transferred them $1 million to not do the job.
Right. Yeah. Or 2 million.
Yeah, or two. Now, how did you end up going on that job?
We ended up doing the cost plus 14%. We saved, our cost ended up being close to $1.5 million under our guaranteed max. So we split that 1.5 million. So we got our cost plus 14% plus 750.
750 on 13.5. You've now added another sort of
Another
5%.
5%. Right.
Well done. Look at him. He's at
Yeah.
19. That's the businessman right
And
there.
and at the end of it, it was a battle to get that, because all of a sudden everybody on his side was saying, "Why are we paying more than cost plus 14%?" I was literally on vacation. Jimmy, I was on vacation It was December of 2018. I'll never forget it. On vacation when we were trying to finally wrap this whole thing up. And we were about to place liens on that property because they would not agree to pay us that other 50% of the savings. And I never go to the Caribbean, but my wife and I went to the Caribbean, and I was on the phone for 3 whole days. 3 whole days back and forth with these guys, but it is what it is. Another one we walked away from that I think is worth talking about. It was for a lumberyard, Lowe's, here in the States. I don't know if you have them over there, but there was a Lowe's store being built, and we were the apparent low bidder to the general contractor, so they invited me in for an interview, and I went in, and there's a table with 2 guys on each side of the table, and then the owner of the business on the far right of the table. So I felt like I was, like in a mobster movie or something, just the way it was set up. And so we like just got started talking, and all of a sudden his phone rings. He goes, "1 second, Herbie." He goes off, and he's standing in the corner of the room. "Yeah, I want twin 300 Evinrudes on that boat." "Yeah, no, not Yamahas. I want Evinrudes." "Okay, just get me what I want." "Sorry about that, Herbie." Phone rings again. "Excuse me, Herbie. I want a TV on the north wall, the whole wall. That's what I want. Okay? Either get me what I want or get somebody else to do it. Okay?"
Yeah, no, I'm out of the Lowe's. Second
And
phone call, I'm out.
I said, here's, I can save you $150,000 right now. You can call my competitor, tell them I'm $150,000 lower than I am, and they'll drop to my price. I know they will, and you can have them build this job. I'm out. And he called the competitors. They took the bait. They did the job, and they never got paid the last $1 million.
I had a guy, and I'll make this the last one. He's given me the wind up twice because we just sat here having a great chat. I had a guy, we walked in, my sales rep had been chasing him. He said, "Jimmy, come down. This guy uses a lot of plant equipment and stuff like that." I'm going to get this paper over here. We don't use paper dockets anymore. Here is Starbuck docket number 228,731. However, we walked in. We sat down, and he goes, "Coffee?" And I said, "Oh, not really." And he goes, "Okay, you'll have one. 3 short blacks." Pulled his phone out, office girl, 3 short blacks. And he says, "We'll talk when they come in." And he sat down, sat in silence for 2 minutes until these 3 short blacks came in. Obviously a move that he's seen in a negotiation 101 tactic.
Oh, yeah.
The 3 coffees come down, and like I'm gonna do this here. The 3 coffees came in. He went, "Every price is 20% too high," and threw the piece of paper down on the table. And I looked at my old sales rep, Ash, who was working for me, and I said, "Okay, we're about done. I appreciate the coffee, but I'm not going to drink it. I hope that you have a really great day, and thank you very much, and we'll go." And Ash is standing there. We actually haven't said anything. Like Ash, like his mouth was open, and I'm like, "No, we're going. Get up." And we walked outside, and he goes, "Jimmy, why?" Like, obviously, like it was all based around this negotiation thing, all of it. And I said, "No, he's an asshole." I said, "Whether it's negotiations or something like that."
And we started this conversation with, how much money extra do you need in the bank? And we've gone far afield here. We've gone all over the place. But one of the best ways to have money in the bank is walk away from bad jobs. And when people treat you like that, you have to walk away. Contractors are so bad about walking away. And I've been that person. You have to walk away from these bad jobs. When you can see the way people treat other people, I mean, like that thing that I walked into on the Lowe's project, watching that guy make a total ass of himself.
Yeah.
I don't even think he was really on the phone with anybody.
No, I think like this is this tactic, or that like they've read a book somewhere that says, make them drink your coffee and then don't talk for 90 seconds. I can't imagine that you'd ever meet anyone and sit at the table with them in an office, like it was inside his office, Herbert. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And he sat there and said, we'll talk when the coffee comes in. And then pretty like...
You got me in the eye when you did that last time.
Okay, well, that's about, we talked around in circles. Do we have another question for next week?
I've got a couple, and I'm gonna read a couple, and we can decide next week if we address both of them. I've heard you guys mention it, but I'm not sure I understand. What is tempo, and how do I get it? The next one, I say I want my team to take ownership, but they still wait for me to make decisions. Is that on them, or am I causing it without realizing it?
Same. Can you answer that question for me?
You won't know for 3 weeks what the answer is to that.
Wow.
I think you know.
Yeah, but it's a constant thing. Like some of these questions are, what is tempo? I'm still trying to figure out the right one. You have times that 80% of it or 90% of it, you're there. You still never feel like everything is always sorted. And please tell me this from looking back. Herb, did you ever sit down and go, every single part of my business is perfect?
No, but I can say I can go back on when I was a foreman or when I was a superintendent. I can say this part of that job has tempo.
Agreed.
I mean, every single piece of work you ever do, no matter what, will never reach up to potential because our potential grows every day.
Ooh.
So we will never reach our potential, right?
I love it.
But we can always get better, and that's the key to that's the human condition, I think. And then
I want to answer both of them.
All right, let's deal with both of them. So homework. There's a book called Turn the Ship Around. I pulled it up here. It's by David Marquette, who's a captain of the U.S. Navy submarine. He took on the worst performing submarine in the U.S. Navy, nuclear submarine. And a year later, it was the best performing submarine in the U.S. Navy. It's called Turn the Ship Around. Turn the Ship
Louis
Around.
going to buy it for me for my birthday. You
Yeah.
need to buy the book, Louis.
But let me do that, okay?
It's going to be too long from America. We need it to be quick so that when I talk to you, I've got one book that I'll power through right now because I go through stages of reading. Reading is good, but I'll read for a long time, and then I won't read for 3 months a page.
Same with me.
So I'll read that on.
When I send you my 100th anniversary book, what are you going to do? That's coming in about a month, I think.
I need a new paperweight at home, so I'll probably leave it there for a month or 2 or 3, and then I'll read it 7 hours a day for 3 or 4 days and finish it.
It's not that long a book. But anyways, this take ownership thing, this book kind of describes if you want a head start on your own business, your own life, Turn the Ship Around, L. David Marquette. It's a great book on how he turned that ship around in 1 year.
Perfect. Well, Herb, next week we catch up again, or the week after. Thank you everyone for listening. Please review, and we just got 2 questions in 1 episode. We would love to have 5 to read out and then think of it and then maybe get some responses about what other people would like us to answer than me and Herb deciding. Imagine if we had 5, read them out, released the episode and got people to comment on which ones they'd prefer. I think that would be great.
That would be great. Next time you and I talk, we will have had our 100th anniversary party.
Herb, congratulations on your 100 years. I look forward to hearing about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.